Okay, so the topic we are going to discuss now is the ethics in AI basically. So, what you find is that since you are trying to make the AI system behave in a way that human being does, it will be doing some very important tasks. So, when it is doing very important tasks, it's necessary to see that the performance is up to the mark and that it behaves in the way we want it to behave, because you are trying to give it some type of autonomy. So when you are trying to give autonomy, it should not be doing anything against other human beings, etc. So generally there should be some type of code of ethics which is there for the um, AI system to follow. In other words, it's a guiding principles to ensure the responsible development and deployment of artificial intelligence such that it's good for human beings and society at large, right? So it should not be doing something which goes against human values or against the well-being of the entire society at large, right? So it's necessary to take those things into account. So it is the study of how to optimize the beneficial impact of artificial intelligence. So you try to get the beneficial thing without the risks and the other adverse outcomes which come out of it. Okay, so anything which causes risk or which causes some type of adverse outcome will have to be reduced in some way. Okay, so um, in other words, when you're giving more and more autonomy to the computer, it shouldn't be like there are some fears which are voiced by some people who say that the computer may take over the world, right? So that is what you need to basically avoid. Of course, that is talking in a very big sense, but even with the systems that we have now, you need to see that whatever is done is for the well-being of society. Another factor that needs to be taken into account is that suppose some system doesn't behave properly. For example, you may have a examination system which evaluates the examination of all the students and gives the marks. Suppose there is some glitch in that, or there is some bug in the program or something, and you get results which are not correct. Now, who is going to take responsibility for that? You know, you can't say that the computer is going to take responsibility for that. So, you need to see who takes the responsibility for whatever is going on. Because any work that is done, somebody needs to take responsibility for that work. So, why is this important? Of course, I've been telling you all this time. So, basically, we can say that you want to avoid harm. Okay. So, you see that no harm will come out of the system, right? So, for example, if you have a robot which does something, okay, and that goes against it harms people, right? So then what do you do to prevent that? Okay. Second is to build trust. Okay, so what happens is you have an AI system, and if you say that it has followed certain ethics, then you can have some trust in that system, right? And the people who have developed it, that they have used these ethics and then built this system. Okay. And that you can trust it mainly because whatever is being done is not being done by a human being but actually by a machine. And then you are ensuring responsible innovation. So, whatever innovation is done by the system, right? So, we do talk about um, the computer, going through problem solving and coming up with new solutions, etc. Right? So when you're saying all that, it needs to be seen that the innovation is responsible. Okay, you cannot innovate something which is not good for society basically. So you need to see about that. And promoting inclusivity. Okay, for example, there may be some members of the society who are left out in your system, right? For example, you may have a system which has a bias against women, or it may have a bias against black people, or some particular race of people, etc. Right? Now that is something which you should not have. It should be beneficial to all the members of the society. Okay, this type of thing is very important, especially when you are using it for hiring. Okay, so when you are using a system for hiring, and maybe without knowing it has some bias. Okay, and the bias could be because of the data it has used. Okay, so maybe the data itself has some bias. So when you have such type of a data, then there may be some bias in your system, and you cannot have a hiring system which has a bias. For example, if you find that it has a bias against say black people or something, you cannot use such a hiring system. Okay, you need to scrap it basically. You can't have something which doesn't give equality to all. Okay, and preventing bias. Okay, so if the data is not accurate, okay, then you find that there may be some people who are underrepresented or represented, or some marginalized groups or individuals, right? So for this you need to have a particular code of ethics to see that this doesn't really occur. So what are the key aspects of the ethics? First of all, there should be fairness and non-discrimination. So that is, everybody is treated equally. Okay, it's fair to all people, and there shouldn't be any biases. Okay, or it should not be discriminatory in any way. The second one is the transparency and explainability. This is especially important when we are talking about trust, right? So when you're talking about trust, to have trust in the system, you should be able to see some transparency in the system. How does it come up with a particular reasoning? What is the reasoning behind some decision that was taken, etc. If you are able to see that explainability and some transparency in the system, then you can have more trust in the system. Third, accountability. Like I said, somebody has to be held responsible for the actions. Okay. So maybe the people who have developed the system, or some particular corporation, or some particular agency will have to take responsibility for whatever decisions are taken by the AI system. So this is where things like some governance by the government, or some code of ethics, etc., come into the picture. The next point is the privacy of the data. Okay, so basically they use data which is available on the internet, data which has been collected, etc. And it may actually, if you take that data, and if that data is individually taken, then it may actually intrude on a person's privacy. Okay, it may be a person's individual personal data which is there. So if you take this personal data, okay, if you are combining all that personal data of different people, and you have a system which uses that information to see what its behavior should be, that is one thing. But you need to see that you protect the data, and the data is not available to everyone, right? So there may be somebody who takes this data and misuses private data, right? So people are somewhat sensitive to this. They are very apprehensive about their private data. So this needs to be taken into account. Okay. Next is the security. In other words, see that it is secure and it does not leaked out the data, right? It should be robust and secure. There shouldn't be malicious attacks or unintended consequences, etc. Even the system, the AI system, when it is working, suppose there is some malicious attack on it, okay, you may find that it may be doing something totally different, right? So that's what you need to see, that the system is secure from malicious attacks, right? Next is that it should be human centric. So it should be in such a way that the well-being of human beings is taken into account, right? And it respects human autonomy. So the individuality of human beings is respected, their personal data is respected, individuals are, human individuals are basically respected basically. Then you have something like environment sustainability. Generally they say that because you are working with huge amounts of data, etc., you find that energy efficiency is not there, and that may actually uh, affect the environment. So you need to see that into account. Next is the inclusion. Like I said, everyone, there should be inclusivity in whatever the AI system does. For example, if it is used for hiring, see that it does not have any bias towards any race or any gender or anybody. Okay, so you need to see that the inclusivity is there for all human beings, right? Next one is value alignment. So when it makes decisions, you have to see that it takes human values into account. So that is one thing which needs to be taken into account over there. And trust. Like I said, people should have trust in the system in more than one ways. In like, it should be explainable. Okay, you should know that it is secure and no malicious attacks are there. Okay, and the system won't suddenly do something, right, which is not good for human beings, etc. So these aspects, all these aspects have to be taken into account when you look at AI ethics. So first of all, the bias in the data is something which you need to keep in mind, and you should see that the data being collected does not have any bias. Okay, for example, if you see this in 2018, Amazon had a AI recruiting tool. Okay, so in that, what was being done was that if there was any word called women in the biodata, then it was downgrading that resume, right? So what happened was the AI tool was discriminating against women, right? Whether Amazon may not even have known that this is happening. It may be just a bias which is picked up from the data which it used, right? So when you say that the AI tool was discriminating against women, then obviously they had to scrap that tool, right? They cannot use such a tool, because then people may go to court, etc., and say that this is what they are doing, etc. So bias is one very important aspect or a challenge, because the bias may be present in the data itself, and secondly the bias may be there in the people who are developing the system, right? And there may be a bias in the society itself, and that society may be also getting into the system. So all these biases will have to be taken into account. Secondly, the privacy. Okay, so like I said, they are taking data from all sorts of places. Okay, we know that AI requires to use lot of data to train the system, right? So what do they do? They take from the data from different places. It may be just pulled out from the internet, from social media. They may take photos, comments, whatever people put in Facebook or Twitter, etc. Maybe online purchases which people make, etc. Right? And what happens is all these things may help you to come up with a better system, which takes the actual societal needs into account, and the customer experience may be much better. But then the question is that you have not taken the consent of those individuals before taking the data. Okay, so you are taking the data, just pulling it out from the internet. You are taking photos, comments, online purchases of which people made, etc., and details about that. All these things you are taking without consent, okay, from to use this personal data. So people are asking questions like, how can they take people's personal data like that and use it? Okay. So when the companies use it, they have to see how they are storing and using that data. They'll have to assure the people that their data is not going to be disclosed and that they are not using individual person's data in any way, etc., and show that the data is secure, okay, and cannot be leaked out, etc. Okay. So you need to see that they eliminate vulnerabilities and opportunities for surveillance, hacking, and cyber attacks, right? So wherever data is there, there are always people trying to hack the system, right? Or attack it in some way, right? So you need to show that you're eliminating all those problems. And AI and the environment. So since the AI models are large, they require significant amounts of energy. So now they are trying to come up with methods for energy efficient AI. So what needs to be done is you need to take the environment into account. Okay. So environmental ethical concerns will have to be taken in the policies that are made. So these are some of the challenges which need to be faced. Okay, so let us look at bias itself. Okay. Um, so instances of bias and discrimination across a number of intelligence systems have raised many ethical questions. How do you safeguard against that bias and discrimination? Okay. So even though the companies may have well-meaning intentions, there can be unforeseen consequences of incorporating AI into things like hiring practices, right? One of them is hiring practices. So what you find is this bias and discrimination is not only in hiring, in hiring or bias in attacking certain groups of people while hiring. You even have applications like facial recognition software, okay, and social media algorithms. So you find that these also there is some bias which is there, okay. So you find that IBM had a facial recognition software which it sort of gave up, okay. Um, because like he said, we firmly oppose and will not condone use of any technology including facial recognition technology for mass surveillance, racial profiling, violation of basic human rights and freedoms, okay, or any purpose which is not consistent with our value and principles of trust and transparency. So obviously IBM had a problem with their facial recognition software, okay. So there is something called the Belmont report which is available for places where you do experiments and algorithm design, which is based on using people, okay, for the experiments. So what you do is you take so many people and you use them and carry out some experiment and you see what are the results of that experiment, etc. So there are some principles which are taken into account when you consider these experiments. Okay, the first one is to have respect for persons. It recognizes autonomy of individuals and upholds an expectation for researchers to protect individuals with diminished autonomy. For example, there may be people who have some type of disability or maybe below the a certain age, okay, some age restriction, or if they may be old or they may be very young, etc. Right? And so the consent of individuals, so the individual should be aware of what they are doing and what are the potential risks and benefits of what they are doing, and they should have chosen to participate in this, right? So that is the respect that you have to give to each and every person who's participating in the experiment. Okay, so the next point is about beneficence. So in other words, it should do good to all people, okay, to all human beings. So in other words, it should be sort of equitable for all, and the intention should be to do good. In other words, no harm should be done to anybody. And the third one is the justice. So issues such as fairness and equality. So you could say there are 5 points you can consider here. It could be, for example, that there should be sort of equal share to everyone, or it could be according to individual need. So those who have need will have a larger share, that type of thing, individual effort, societal contributions, merit. So all these things are taken into account, or whatever is applicable to the particular AI system which is, or the experimentation which is being done, that has to be taken into account. So this Belmont report can actually give a sort of a initial guideline for what needs to be done for AI systems also. So what are the AI ethics in practice? Okay, the first one is to do some type of impact assessment. So they try to assess to see what are the type of risks that are there, etc. Try to mitigate it. Okay, so you need to do some type of assessment, think along those lines to see if there is any potential risk that can be there, etc. The second one is to set up some type of ethics committee. So every company can have an ethics committee, and the ethics committee will see that there is a responsible development of AI. So whenever some AI system is developed, it needs to go through the AI ethics committee. So what are the AI? You may have some AI code of ethics. Okay, so you develop a code of ethics to help in the development and use of AI. And of course, the points to be taken into account is avoiding bias, ensuring privacy of users, and mitigating environmental risks. Okay, so you have a code of ethics to take all these into the picture. And you can have some type of company and government regulations. So the government can have some regulations so that all companies need to follow those regulations, and companies also need to have some type of regulations. And you have to follow the global and national ethics issues. So you have some ethics being followed at the global level already. So try to incorporate those. Plus at the national level, what are the ethical issues that you need to take into account, and put all those things together. And you find that big companies nowadays like IBM, Google, Meta, etc., they have a code of ethics. Okay, so they have a team itself which is there to tackle the ethical issues which arise, especially when you collect huge amounts of data. So you need to see that you are tackling the ethical issues, and you need to assure society and the government that you are following all the ethical issues when you are collecting all that huge amounts of private data. So what are the practices that you can have? So I gave you a couple of practices here. One is impact assessment. Second one is setting up the ethics committee. Third one is to have some code of ethics. And the fourth one is to have some type of regulations, which I already spoke of in the previous point. That is, the government will set up some regulations for the use of AI for all companies basically. So there will be some rules which they have to follow. So you find in some countries this thing is happening. You have government and intergovernmental entities which are devising some regulations and ethical policies. And what are the things that you need to have in the governance program? It should define the roles and responsibilities of people working with AI. Secondly, it should educate all people involved in the AI life cycle about building AI in a responsible way. Thirdly, it should establish processes for building, managing, monitoring, and communicating about AI and AI risks. Okay, so you need to identify what are the risks and then try to reduce on those risks, monitor it, and communicate information to others about the risks and how it has been monitored. And leverage tools to improve AI's performance and trustworthiness. So these are the 5 points which I gave you now. These are the AI ethics you need to set in place before developing in any AI system basically. And who are the stakeholders when you come to the AI ethics? Okay, you can see that all these actors whom we are talking about here, they all play a part, okay, or an important part in ensuring that AI ethics is followed. First of all, you have the academics. So it's the academics who actually develop new theories, right, and they and carry out research, etc. They can also help to support the government, corporations, etc. You know, they actually collaborate with all of them. So they see that these AI ethics are followed. So academics are one important actor. Another one is the government. Okay, so because the government can have some governance, some regulations, some governance, okay, which they set into place, which can also take into account things like how does it affect the economy, how is it secure, okay, so that people's data is not leaked out, or their privacy is not violated, etc. So what you need to do is that you need to see all these things are taken care of by the government, and they have a report which is called Preparing for the Future of AI, which was developed, and that outlines all these things basically. You can have intergovernmental entities like things like United Nations, World Bank, UNESCO, all these people, right? And they can raise awareness about what are the ethical principles to be followed, and they can sort of keep an eye on all the countries to see that they are following all these ethics globally, right? And they can have global ethical guidelines which need to be followed by AI system. The next one is a non-profit organization. So you can have non-profit organizations like Black in AI, Queer in AI, right? So these help to see that there's no discrimination, right? Um, they help to gain representation within the AI technology. Then you have Future of Life Institute, which created some guidelines, okay, which are some AI principles, okay, which outline specific risks, challenges, and outcomes for AI technology. So these can be used. So these are all brought up by the non-profit organizations, and then you have the private companies who actually carry out this AI and produce the AI systems which they are using. Okay, and they actually should see that they follow the guidelines. It's very important. So you have things like Google, Meta, and other tech companies, banking, consulting, healthcare, and other private sector industries, etc. Those who develop AI technology and those who use AI technology. Okay, so you can see things like banking, healthcare, okay, etc. They use a lot of AI technology. So all these people have to be sure that they have ethics teams and they have codes of conduct which they are using. So each company usually has their standards which they would have set, okay, some ethical principles, and they will be following those ethics. Okay, and these are all some organizations that promote AI ethics. So we can see that, of course, all these are sort of US based, not not really based in India, but we can follow along the same footsteps. Maybe there are some which are being used here in India too. So you have things like Algorithm Watch, AI Now Institute, okay, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, Center for Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence, National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. So all these are organizations which help to promote the AI ethics basically. So many of them are sort of non-profit organizations, some of them may be departmental organizations. And for example, this one is cooperation of various institutes and universities basically. Okay. And this is an independent commission which has been created, right? So all these organizations actually help to see that AI ethics is promoted. So let us look at IBM's view on AI ethics. Okay, so they have actually come up with their own view on AI ethics. So they actually have 3 points here. The purpose of AI is to augment human intelligence. Okay, so what they are trying to say is that you are only trying to augment human intelligence, you are not trying to replace human intelligence. Okay. So whatever is done, it only helps to make the job little easier and make it easier for the human beings to see that they are not doing jobs which are something like mechanical jobs, etc. And but they are doing a job which is of a higher quality, right? So it makes it easier. You give all those low level jobs to the AI system, right? And also you have to commit yourself to seeing that when you create some AI system, there may be some jobs which are lost. So the people who are who are losing that particular job, they need to be supported and transitioned into some other skill so that they can, or the skill which may be required to use the AI system, right? Secondly, they say data and insights belong to their creator. So in other words, they are saying that the private data of individuals is their own private data, okay, and it belongs only to them, it does not belong to IBM. So IBM has not and will not provide access to client data for any surveillance programs, and it remains committed to protecting the privacy of its clients. So that's the second point. And the third point is that it should be transparent and explainable. So you need to see that it is transparent and explainable so that the system is trustworthy, okay, and that people can use the output which is given by these systems because it is trustworthy. So they have to be sure about who trains their AI system, what data was used in the training, and what went into the recommendations of your algorithm. So all these things will have to be taken into account. And they used what are called the 5 pillars. Okay, whenever they adopted any AI technology, they use these 5 criteria. The first one is explainability. In other words, the system should be transparent. Okay. Um, so everyone should know what are the algorithms being used and what is the data being used, etc. Secondly, the fairness. Okay, so it gives equitable treatment to everyone, all individuals, groups, etc. And there won't be any biases in it. Okay, so for example, humans also have a bias, right? So this bias which humans have should not be incorporated into the system. Okay, so that is where some amount of work is required. Third one is what is called the robustness. Okay, so you see that it is defended from adversarial attacks, okay, minimizing security risks. And so people can have confidence in the system basically. Fourth one is the transparency. To see how it works, to evaluate its functionality and what are its strengths, limitations, etc. Everyone should know about that. So that is the transparency. And fifth one is the privacy. Okay, so it safeguards the consumer's privacy and data rights. Okay, and it gives assurance to users about how their personal data will be used and how it is protected, not made available to everyone, right? So that is the thing. So these are some guidelines which IBM has used, and the same thing you will find that many of the people who are working on AI, all the organizations, they also have adopted some ethics, okay, some guidelines. Um, so, on another note, you have what are called the 3 laws of robotics. So, this is proposed by Isaac Asimov. Okay, he used to write the books, right, and these science fiction books. And in these science fiction books, you had these robots, okay, who would take over the work and do a lot of things, right? So, these are some laws which the robots were supposed to follow. So the idea here is to see that the robot does not overtake the system, okay, such that they are actually the ones in power, right? So there are 3 laws. The first one is a robot may not injure a human being or allow a human being to come to harm. Okay, so that's the first rule which the robot has to follow. And the second law is the robot must obey the orders given to it by the human being, except when such orders would conflict with the first law. Okay, and the third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or the second law. So this type of laws were necessary to protect the human beings from what the robots could have done. Okay, of course here it is just a science fiction, right, which was being used at that time. So this actually gives you an idea about how the ethics are really necessary, okay, and it is also necessary to see in what way the AI system, the output of that is being used, etc. So this is the end of this session on ethics. Okay, so the idea was to bring out the idea of how important ethics is in artificial intelligence. So I'll stop the session now.